In 2002, a movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival that caused about 200 people to walk out of. It wasn't a gory slasher, it wasn't a critically panned movie that most people hated, it was Irreversible. Let me take you back to the early 2000s. Jason was going to space, Michael was miraculously switching outfits with paramedics, and evil was becoming resident. A lot of the horror output in this time period could best be described as lighthearted. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Horror movies don't always have to be dark and serious. But outside a few standout titles, the American output at this time was pretty weak and mostly tame. But across the pond, that was not the case. Something dark was emerging in France and would come to define a lot of the best horror of the 2000s. That something was the new wave of extreme French horror. While the new French extremity technically started in the late 90s, I feel that the release of Irreversible was what really solidified it. These movies were considered extreme or transgressive for multiple reasons, but mostly because they were full of graphic violence, sex, and pure fucking nihilism. Seriously, the one thing that stands out the most in these movies is how dark and depressing most of them are. It's the total opposite of what we were getting in America. It's comical comparing them side by side. On one hand, you had this, and on the other, you had this.
Alex? 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 Arrêtez!
Polar opposites. So let's get to the actual movie. Irreversible is essentially a simple revenge story. Alex, played by Monica Bellucci, is brutally assaulted and left for dead. Her boyfriend, played by Vincent Cassel, who was her real-life spouse at the time, and ex-boyfriend, go out seeking vengeance against the guy who did it, and they leave their own trail of destruction in the process. It may not sound like much, but it's the way that all of it is presented that makes it so effective. The story is told in reverse chronological order, which means that the beginning of the movie is actually the end of the story, and vice versa. It's also shot in a series of long, uninterrupted takes that give it a gritty, realistic feel. In addition, each scene transitions to the next with these weird, wave-like camera movements that add to the realism and grittiness and just feel disorienting. It doesn't feel like you're watching a regular movie. Then we have the violence. There are two scenes that this movie is notorious for. The first is the fire extinguisher scene, which is one of the first scenes of the movie and one of the most brutal death scenes you will ever watch. Like I said, the way this movie is shot makes it feel very realistic, almost documentary-like. So when you add that on top of somebody getting their head bashed in with a fire extinguisher, it makes for a very unsettling watch. Then there's the assault scene, which is the most controversial part of the film. Alex is brutally assaulted in a pedestrian underpass for 10 straight minutes. It's extremely uncomfortable to watch and a big reason why some criticize the film as being gratuitous. I personally don't think the violence in this film is gratuitous. Brutal, yes, but not in an exploitative way. If the rest of the film played out like a regular movie without the extended one-shot takes, and only those two scenes were the ones with a lingering camera, then I could understand. But like I said, the whole movie is shot that way and they just feel like a natural part of the story. There's also a reason why the film's tagline is "Time destroys everything." Because once you get to the end of the movie, which is really the beginning of the story, you're just watching Alex laying in the grass on a nice day, reading a book, completely at peace. Nothing bad has happened yet. She has no idea what's coming. Except you, the viewer, already know. You've already sat through the fire extinguisher, you've sat through the tunnel, so instead of feeling relief with a peaceful moment, you feel sick. You want to reach into the screen and tell her to run, but you can't because it already happened. And that's the whole trick of telling the story backwards. It's not about shocking you up front, it's about making that scene at the end unbearable. The title isn't just a description of the plot, it's the actual thesis of the film. Nothing that happens can be undone, and the movie makes you sit with that. Unsurprisingly, the reception to this movie was mixed. I can definitely see why people don't enjoy watching this. I've always thought that this was less of a movie and more of an experience, and it's not a pleasant experience. It's a very dark, disturbing, intense, and depressing one, but it's also very well made and does a fantastic job of grabbing you and dragging you into its grimy world. And good art makes you feel something, whether it's pleasant or not. It's a movie that makes you feel like you need to take a shower afterward to wash it off. It's a gut punch on top of a throat stomp, especially when you go back and realize that the person they killed in the beginning of the movie wasn't the one that they were after. I recommend watching it on a nice sunny day because you'll want to go and sit outside afterwards to cheer yourself up. On a lighter note, the soundtrack was crafted by Thomas Bangalter, who you may know better is one of the dudes in Daft Punk. The fact that one of the guys that was responsible for Get Lucky was also a part of this film is kind of hilarious. But anyway, the soundtrack ranges from some really nauseating drones at the beginning of the movie to some synthwave bangers that wouldn't be out of place on a John Carpenter soundtrack. It's good shit. So that is Irreversible. It's an unforgettable movie no matter what you think about it, and one of the defining horror movies of the 2000s. If you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend getting a physical copy because the only place that it's streaming on is Prime Video, and the version that's on Prime Video is the chronological cut that came out in 2019. That version is the same movie overall, but it was re-edited to go in chronological order, so it's a slightly different experience. If you've seen it, let me know your thoughts. Stay creepy.